Hey pups, RB here. I've talked about the Legend of Zelda series a lot on this channel, probably about as much as Pokemon, and to be honest, I was going to do a Majora's Mask review, but since I've played Twilight Princess a lot more than Majora's Mask as of recently, I decided to do a review of Twilight Princess and save the Majora's Mask review for another day. Twilight Princess does take inspiration from two previous Zelda games, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Considering Zelda is one of the darkest game series in Nintendo's franchise market, next to the Metroid games, and maybe a few others in the Nintendo world. And Twilight Princess is no exception to that rule. The game has amazing graphics, beautiful imagery and artwork, and is an overall entertaining game to play, especially if you're a huge wolf fanatic like me. But we'll get to that later. Before we get into the main review at hand, let's look at some of the history this game has involving its creation. The game was actually released for the GameCube and Wii titles in 2006 for the holiday season. The game takes place after the events of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Granted, I only have the Wii version, so that's what I'll be looking at for this video. Though the game started out as a GameCube title, and was later released for both that and the Wii as a launch title. It later released a remake, Twilight Princess HD, for the Wii U in March 2016, 10 long years after the original was released. And the game even developed a manga series in 2018, much like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time. It's a common thing for video games to be turned into mangas, and vice versa. Now that we've got some of the history out of the way, onto the development of the game. I'll try to keep this one short. Much like the original Legend of Zelda, the game took heavy inspiration from the famous and popular book series Lord of the Rings. Believe it or not, the movie adaptations of the novels were what garnered a lot of inspiration for the game, and were released around the same time of Twilight Princess's development. The game was announced at E3 in 2004, with a teaser trailer shown to a small group, and later grew into an immediate hype once more announcements and trailers were released. And after a long silence for months, at a game developers conference in 2005, the game was later released for the GameCube, and will be delayed from March 2006 to December of that year, mostly to make sure it was perfected for that console, and was released as one of the Wii's launch titles on September 13th, 2006. Now that we got all that out of the way, on to the characters. As always, with most of our reviews, we start off with the characters. Of course, we got our hero and the only playable character, Link, Princess Zelda, the damsel in distress, and the occasional badass chic ninja lady, the Jafar/Scar of the Zelda franchise, Ganondorf, and two newest additions to the franchise, Minda, the imp version of Link's fairy Navi, without the "Hey, listen!" quote she always screams out, and Zant, the Darth Vader of the Shadowverse in Zelda. But I'm getting ahead of myself here. There's a bunch of other characters as well, like the villagers, forest dwellers, animals Link can converse with in his wolf form, and many more. But I just wanted to get the main ones out of the way, and I can already assume you know who most of the characters are. Link, Zelda, and Ganon. But what about Minda and Zant? Let's start off with Minda. She's Link's newest Navi, so to speak, but less annoying. She's got a sharp tongue, and tends to act on a whim, and teams up with Link to save the Twilight Kingdom, as the area is called in the game, and all of Hyrule. She also possesses magical skills, like warping through space, and assisting in helping Link attack enemies. She speaks mostly gibberish, and is the only one with a voice, and the gibberish she speaks is actually Hyrulean, as it were. Again, it's a nice break from Navi's "Hey, listen!" and the occasional "Watch out!" Navi's cute, but...
Hey, listen! Hey, listen! Hey, listen! Hey, listen!
Yeah... I like Minda better. And she's especially helpful in wolf form, which we'll get to that later. Zant is the enemy of the game alongside Ganon. He's also a minion of Ganon's, and proven to be a powerful sorcerer. When he's wearing his mask, he seems to be calm and collected, but throughout, he's also seen to be cold and ruthless, and having a hatred for Minda, but is later to be revealed as an absolute psycho, throwing a temper tantrum, much like a toddler, and constantly trying to kill Link, Minda, and probably a bunch of other characters as well. He also has this weird godlike view of Ganon, seeing him as a god. Yeah, this guy needs to be in the loony bin and needs a therapist. He also possesses telekinetic powers, such as humiliating Minda and Link without waving his hands. Again, there are more characters, but if I were to go over all of them, this video would take much longer to make, and it'd take me forever to get through all of them. I'll link some sources below if you want to learn about them and get more info on the characters in the game. The game takes place a century after the events of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Maybe. Link lives a normal life in the village of Auradon, a peaceful village close to the land of Hyrule, and a strange evil plagues the land of Hyrule as the Twilight Realm consumes the land and plunges it into darkness. But I'm getting a bit ahead of myself. Link is then attacked by moblins and kidnapped by a part of Hyrule, taken over by the Twilight Realm, and taken into a dungeon in Hyrule Castle after turning into a wolf. Once he wakes up, he meets Minda and helps him escape the dungeon, and later meets Princess Zelda, whom explains Zant and his moblins and Twilight beasts attack Hyrule Castle, which then Link has to go on a quest to push Twilight out of the kingdom and restore balance between dark and light, and defeat the evil casting the imbalance. The story isn't as dark as Majora or Ocarina, but it's still a dark story, but with some quirky characters and some funny moments. It's still an overall interesting story regardless. Okay, it's actually darker than Majora, but probably not as dark as Ocarina, because that game seemed a lot darker than I remembered. I did play a little bit of Ocarina when I had a physical copy of the game, but kind of stopped after the first boss because it wasn't the game for me. Considering Link is an adult in the game, it plays out similarly to the second half of Ocarina of Time, with Link exploring Hyrule as an adult. The transformation scene of the game, when Link turns into a wolf, Wolf Link as he's called in this form, there isn't much Wolf Link can do when he's transformed like this, sadly. Like the lack of item usage, like battling with a sword and blocking with a shield. Abilities he can use are similar to that of a real wolf, biting, digging, howling, dashing, and plenty of others as well. The difference in Majora, when Link wore a mask, he had more abilities, such as bouncing on water, gliding, and talking to other Deku in his Deku form, for example. And if you're a wolf fanatic like me, you can't complain about that, and the wolf form proves to be extremely useful in the game. Wolf Link can also jump at big gaps with Minda's help, and use a wolf senses to track down certain scents, for example. Though, it is a bit annoying when you're forced to be stuck in wolf form, until you could change from wolf to human at will, with the help of a shadow crystal and the Master Sword. Human Link, however, has a lot more abilities, such as using the bow and arrow while riding Epona, and various hidden skills, such as follows: Ending Blow, Shield Attack, Backslice, Helm Splitter, Mortal Draw, Jump Spike, and Great Spin. Again, never played the GameCube version, I only have the Wii version, but as for the gameplay for Wii players, it's also a bit frustrating as well. There's an inconsistency when swinging the sword and trying to take down an enemy or a boss, but that's the only gripe I have about it, as far as most critiques go for the gameplay itself. Also, count the side quests, there's only 60 hours of gameplay. Yeah, this is a long game, considering there's a lot more to do in Twilight Princess than there was in Ocarina. Speaking of which, games like Legend of Zelda are extremely well known for its unique locations and areas like Hyrule. A lot of new areas were added into the game to make it more interesting. Two of my favorites are Auradon Provolence and Farnon Provolence. Chalk it up to me growing up around cottagecore things and forest goblin aesthetics, but the areas were amazingly beautiful. The developers really put their heart and soul into making these areas as eye-catching and pleasing as they could in the game. That's all I really gotta say on the locations for the most part. And I forgot to mention that the Twilight Realm is like the alter ego to Hyrule. Yeah, that's pretty much it. As for the graphics and designs, considering the game was the launch title for the Wii and released near the end of the GameCube's timeline, there are some muddy textures and blocky parts of the models. But despite that, the graphics and design of the game, from the areas, the characters, and literally everything about it is beautiful. And probably one of the most beautiful games in the Zelda franchise, even for a game from 2006. I mean, look at Minda and Wolf Link! Their designs are so unique and beautifully made. Look at them!
Look at it! Look at it! Look at it! I want all of you to look at it!
Now, the music is something I want to talk about real quick. The music is amazing and has certain tones for certain interactions and areas and scenes of the game. I'll put a few examples to hopefully get my point across. I mean? The music is awesome, and there's even the return of Saria's song in the game, the ultimate Zelda fan favorite song from the games. Now, much like all games as a whole, you gotta have your bosses. The mini bosses are pretty entertaining and are very unique in their own right. Some are creepy looking, some are actually pretty cool and badass, and others are interesting. Same can be said for the main bosses, but they've gotten a lot freakier than some of the other bosses from Majora in Ocarina, like Armagoma for example. It's a freaking giant ass spider! I've already said enough about it from a previous video. Arceus, help me. But the other two bosses, Argarok and Star-Lord, while scary in their own right, look so freaking cool, awesome, and overall badass. And each boss and mini-boss has a specialized puzzle before their battles. Some are easy, and others are more challenging than the other puzzles, but they're hella fun. It kind of feels like an adventure, fairy tale, fantasy version of the Portal games. Games like that are big on puzzles, and Zelda is no exception to that rule. Before I get to my overall thoughts on the game, when the game was finally released, about 5.82 million copies for the Wii and 1.32 million for the GameCube were sold. Many journalists and reviewers for the game stated that this was the greatest Zelda game of all time. But is that true for me as a semi-Zelda fan? Well, that's what I'm getting into next. Even though I haven't completed the game, I'm stuck on one of the levels there, but the game is not only beautifully made in regards to designs and graphics, but with epic music, an exciting and interesting storyline, and is an overall fun and enjoyable Zelda game. And aside from Majora, is a gem of a game I would recommend to any Zelda, Nintendo, or any video game player, or any gamer to play. While it may not be one of the all-time classics like the original, Majora, or Ocarina, it's still a gem to the Zelda franchise. Also, Wolflink is awesome and adorable. I want him! Plus, it's also a game for gamers who are fans of adventure and fantasy games, similar to Zelda, but are willing to give the game a shot. That being said, I gladly give this game 5 out of 5 Navis. Alright, that concludes another video. If you want to see more game reviews, let me know in the comments, and be sure to check out my other stuff as well. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next one, pups. Cue the outro. RP is out. Peace!